Good morning, everyone. Thank you. Thank you all for joining us in the Spiritist Talk series promoted by the United Spiritist Federation every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Today, I'm very honored to be here to host a very special Spiritist Talk. Let us all welcome Jussara Korngold, someone who's so dear to all of us, on the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 event. She's speaking from us directly from New York City to discuss prayer in challenging times. Before we turn it over to Jussara, I would like to invite all of you for a short opening prayer. And with that, I would like for all of us to close our eyes, open our hearts, open our minds to all that is good. Let us take a moment to connect with God, connect with the spirits of light who are present here today. Let us also connect with our spiritual benefactors who guide us during our journey on earth. We humbly ask that we are all be blessed and that our dear friend Jussara receive the inspiration during this talk and that we all be touched by her words. So be it. Jussara, welcome. Hope you're doing well. It is so great to have you here and such a significant date to all of us. But before Jussara brings her words of wisdom, I would like to formally introduce her. I would say Jussara is currently the General Secretary of the International Spiritist Council. Jussara is the former president and currently the vice president of the United States Spiritist Federation. She's also the founder and president of the Spiritist Group of New York and the Spiritist Alliance for Books. Ms. Korngold is fluent in Portuguese, English, French, and Spanish. She is an international speaker, published author, as well as a translator. Ms. Korngold works for the Brazil Child Health as its main executive. She's also an executive board member of the Grupo Mulheres do Brasil in New York. Thank you, Jussara. Thank you for your contribution to the Spiritist movement and to the Spiritist Talk series. I would like to take a moment to remind everyone in the audience to please send your questions via chat. We will allow time for your comments, your questions, once Jussara concludes her presentation. Thank you, Jussara. Look forward to hear your words.
Thank you, Marcia. Thank you, everyone. Good morning. It is such a blessing to be here and to be able to talk to you in such a special day. As Marcia mentioned today, for us, not only New Yorkers, but Americans and all over the world, there is no way we will not be remembering what happened here in 9/11. It has been 20 years. All the suffering, all the struggles that this city went through, this country, and the impact that it has caused in the world. That's why we have decided today to bring to you this topic to talk about prayer, because prayer is actually the best way for us to counteract all the challenges, all the difficulties we have in the world. And we have been having quite a few in the past year and a half or so. And we know how hard it has been for each and every one. And if we add, the loss that we had here 20 years ago, the loss that we are having all over the world because of the pandemic, there is no better way for us to connect and to try to continue with life. At the same time, we are during September, the remembrance also of the month of the suicide prevention. And we have to think about the importance of life. And so many people that lose their lives because of illnesses, because of accidents, because of what happened here 20 years ago. And we do understand how hard life can be sometimes, but at the same time, we have to value the possibility of living and use this opportunity, this incarnation, for us to improve and to move forward, to become each time happier and feeling it more and more peace. So the topic today, it's based on a book that is called Religion of the Spirit. It's a very, very special, very precious book. And it was organized by the Spirit Emmanuel, the Spirit mentor of Chico Xavier. And it's about comments that we will study the religious aspect of the Spirit's book. So that's why it's such a precious book. And we see that they were very careful in selecting messages and questions that are contained in the Spirit's book and bringing the religiosity that is behind all that. And that our message today, it's contained in this book that is called, the message is called Prayer and Trial. And this book was composed in the following way. Chico Xavier had a group of study group in the city of Uberaba in 1959, and this group, they have decided to study the Spirit's book, like we said, focusing on the religious aspect of Spiritism. And they would read a question, make their comments, trying to get as deep as they could in the sense of everything that they were reading. And what was really interesting is that Emmanuel, as a spirit, was participating as well. So while everyone was there, joined together, studying, reading, studying, commenting, Emmanuel would participate and would uh, express his comments, his ideas when everyone else had done so. So I don't know about you, but I would love have been able to participate in this group, and I think we learned so much from this experience, because many times we spiritists, we tend to believe that we know enough. We don't need to study because we know the basics, or even more, a little more about it. But then we see Chico, right? And the group of people that worked with Chico had all that experience. They would gather together as a systematic study and would go deep to get the knowledge, to receive all the preciosity, that the precious lessons that were contained there. So this book has 91 messages, all of them related to this book, the Spirit's book, and with those comments. So when we talk about prayer, we have this question that Kardec presented to the spirits: is prayer pleasing to God? And the answer is, prayer is always pleasing to God. It comes from the heart. If it comes from the heart, intention is everything before God, and a prayer from the heart is preferable to one read from a book. No matter how beautiful it may be, if you read more with the lips than with the thought. Prayer is pleasing to God when it's offered with passion, faith, passion and sincerity. And this is the kind of prayer that we are talking about today, regardless of our, particular religion, of our the religious affiliation that we may have, the religious community that we attend. Prayer is always a part of any religious movement, any religiosity. So we have this understanding of connecting to God, of uniting our thoughts to God. And when the spirits reply here that the most important thing is how emotionally involved we are going to be, this is what matters. It's not just, recite words. Sometimes we do understand that we may need some help. Sometimes things are so hard in our lives that even to uh, be able to organize our thoughts, it's so hard, and we may need the help of a book of prayer, something like that. But even then, what really matters is the emotion we are going to send to try to connect with God. And this is what we are talking about here. This is what the book is talking about here. And Leon Denis also talks about prayer, in the same sense that he says that prayer must be an inner outpouring of the soul to God, a solitary conversation, a meditation that is always useful and often fruitful. And then in the sanctuary of consciousness, a secret voice will answer, the voice of the one from whom comes all strength for the struggle of this world, all balm for our wounds, all light for our uncertainties. And he says that this is the voice that consoles, uplifts, persuades, bringing courage, submission, stoic resignation. And in this way, we will feel less sad, overwhelmed. And a ray of divine sunlight illuminates our souls, renewing our hope. So this is the kind of prayer that we are talking about. A prayer, there is a cry, a plea, an outpouring, or a song of love, an act of worship, a moral inventory made under the eye of God, or a simple thought, a memory, a look up to the heavens. This is so important when when we think about it, because like we were saying, for so many times we had this idea that unless I recite words that were given to me from a certain religious affiliation, I'm not be able to connect to God. And this, the understanding that we have now, it has nothing to do with that. It's not by the length of our prayers, the words that we are using, that we are going to reach God, especially in what we are talking about today. Remembering the laws of life, remembering the heroes that voluntarily went to the building trying to save as many as they could, and lost their lives as well. Remembering the family members that had to endure so much suffering with the violent occurrence that we are talking about. And today, with the so many losses that we are having in each and every family because of the pandemic, death that people that are living, and we cannot even go to stay with them for the last minutes of them here on earth. So it's in those moments, how can we really just think about reciting words? Our feelings, emotions are going to be much more powerful. And that's why Leon Denis says here, it's just sometimes I look up to the heaven and say, please, God, help me. Help me to be able to cope with everything that we are going through. In the book, On the Way to a World of Regeneration, we also see Manuel Filomeno de Miranda, through the psychography of Divaldo Franco, saying that it would be enough for the needy, ourselves, to tune in to the sources of love to soon receive the answers in blessings of peace and courage. Prayer certainly does not remove the pain, nor does it prevent the debtor from repairing the wrong, but it alleviates, gives strength, and brings with inner harmony to better solve problems. And no one will ever walk in loneliness and suffering if their thoughts are risen to the source of love. The beneficial assistance will soon come to them. Again, we find here another spirit telling us the importance of prayer in our lives. And sometimes we just don't do it because we are so much focused on the now and the illusions of life and the material lives, and especially now that is we may feel, instead of answering the call to collect ourselves and go after understanding, go after the perennial questions of life. Why am I here? From where did I come from, and to where am I going? We are trying to get advantage and to take advantage of everything, and not really using this precious resource, thinking that it's because it's connected to dogma, perhaps, or to those that do not know better, because science now is explaining everything. Science is not explaining everything. I mean, they we know, right? What we are doing, what we are living now, science is helping a great deal, but it's not being able to remove, this tiny little virus that is going on around the world, right? So we should see prayer with a different view. It's not about, like we said before, reciting words. It's not about being religious in the way that we are talking about blind faith. No, we are talking about physics, and how according to the wavelength of our thoughts, we are going to be sending those vibrations that now physics explain to us, if it's a short wave, if it's a long wave, and how much they can impact, they can travel with the speed of and that is propelled by the energy that comes from our thoughts. So for us to bring positivity, for us to bring peace in our lives, it's super important. And in the Spirit's book, this is the question that the group of Chico Xavier were studying that night, that particular night in 1959. So there we have the group of people that composed the study group of Chico Xavier, consulting the Spirit's book, opening this question: can we avoid our trials or change their nature by praying for ourselves? This is the question that Kardec asked the Spirit. And the Spirit said, your trials are in God's hands, and there are some through which you must persevere right to the very end. God always takes into account the submission with which they are endured. Prayer calls good spirits to your side who give you strength to bear these trials with courage, so that they seem less severe. So what the spirits are telling us here, they are explaining that if in a way we do need to go through certain trials. They are important for us in considering our process of evolvement. At the same time, God is always going to be there, is always going to be seeing if there is a lesson that has been learned. Because trials are lessons that we need to learn. And the more we resist, the more they will be prolonged. So, and of course, the sooner we understand this, chances are that we will not going to be needing to go through that uh, for a longer process. And at the same time, the spirits tell here us here that even when they cannot do anything about it, because it is necessary for us to go through that for our own improvement, we will not be alone. There will always be spirits connect to us to help us to have courage and to not feel all the burdens that those trials are bringing to us. But this depends on us, not necessarily on the spirits, right? So, I brought here another question. This was not the question that they were studying, but just for us to, to expand our studies here in terms of the nature of prayer. And the Spirit says that normally we pray for three things: to praise, to ask, and to offer thanks. Our prayers, the nature of our prayers are going to be more in these three lines. Not quite often we will be praying just to praise God, which should be something that we should consider more. You see, when we look around as well, we see all the beauties of the world, we see the machine of our physical bodies, the way it functions, and it's nothing short of a miracle. We should be praising God for all these opportunities. Asking, this is something that we do quite often. Quite often we are asking like little children sometimes, asking for things that really are not that important for us, but from our perspective of us as still a spirit in the process of learning, they are important. And to offer thanks, which is also not something that we do that often. Remember to thank God for all the possibilities that we are receiving. And there is a little book that is called Seara dos Médiuns. It's not yet translated, but there talks about also the intercessory prayers that we will do on behalf of others, and how much we can actually assist others in this sense. And which is a very common practice in the Spiritist Center. We praying for, people that we know that are in need, that are going to stress. And even now that with the closing of many Spiritist centers due to the restrictions imposed by the pandemic, this type of practice has not stopped. We are doing that online with groups of people praying for those in need. But what this book tells us about is the following: that although we may send the names to people, that to this group of prayers that do that kind of work, if we do not get involved ourselves, the ones that brought the book, it's not going to be the same. So they show in this book an example of someone, of people that have putting the names of those in needs in a notebook, which is a common practice in the Spiritist centers. And but when the spirits are going to look at the names that were written there, some are going to stand up, because it comes, like they say, like a light comes from them. Those are the names of people that really, when they wrote the name of their loved ones, of the people that needed assistance, they were doing that with faith, with the sincere desire to help, to assist. In this case, here in this book, they say that they saw the name of this young man, and the mother was the one that wrote his name in the book, and he was in need of assistance, and immediately two spirits went to help him. So when we think about that, I think it's so beautiful when we think about it, because sometimes, we don't have that kind of faith. We pray, but we say, oh, I don't know if the prayer is coming, because the answer not necessarily comes in the way that we wanted the answer to come. We think that we have not been heard. But like we explained before, God knows best. And sometimes what we are asking for is not going to come and work in our favor. But here you see, even if the spirits could not act and completely solve the situation that this young man was going through, they went to his house, two spirits, to assist and to help. So continuing in the answering of the spirits, the answer of the spirits for that question 663 that we were studying and that Chico was studying, the spirit was saying that prayer is never going to be useless when they are sincere. When we pray, we change our vibration completely. All these layers of negativity, of the shadow layers that surround us, when we pray, it's like we have a beam of light that is all of a sudden turn on, and you start expelling those dark shadows. It's interesting because when we read the book No Solar, and in chapter 2 talks about the prayer that Andrea Lewis said at that moment, that he was in complete despair. He didn't have any faith. He didn't have any kind of belief. He thought that, he never thought really that much about God, especially being a man of science during his time. That's how he describes himself. And when he was at the bottom of, he couldn't even understand what was happening to him, he remembered to pray. And then in the book, it describes that a ray of light appeared, and he could see the mentor, Clarencio, with two other spirits next to him. And then it continues. The description of the book continues. Quite often, we tend to imagine that the light comes from the spirits. And of course, those were really very enlightened spirits, especially Clarencio, one of the ministers of the spiritual colony No Solar. But what happened is that light that they describe in the book was actually coming from the prayer that Andrea Luiz was saying. So his prayer was capable of illuminating the surrounding, breaking that shadow that surrounded him. And in this sense, because of his sincere desire to be assisted, he broke completely that shadow that were preventing the spirits to help him. So even when we do not receive what we need, just by the fact of surrounding us with good energy is quite enough. And the spirits continue replying that it has been said, heaven helps those who help themselves. God could not change the natural circumstances to suit the various opposing demands that are made, because what appears to be a great misfortune to you from your narrow perspective and in relation to your temporary life on earth is often a great blessing for the general order of the universe. The thing is, there is no way that we can understand God's designs. We have a very limited possibility of seeing and viewing, analyzing things. We just see what is very close in the surroundings here. We don't see the big picture like we normally say. So that's why we have to trust that someone that understands better. Very much like little children, if we give them the choice not to go to school, of course they would say, no, I prefer to stay home playing and resting. Why do I have to struggle going to school and homework and all of this and that and the discipline and the responsibility, right? But the parents, knowing what is best for the child, is going to push them, to impose them to go through this experience. So this is the same, and we cannot imagine that what we are going through now in the world is not similar to this example that I just mentioned to you. It's not something that we want to happen, that we want to see, but perhaps this is what we need in order really to become the new generation. So they continue saying, anyway, how many troubles in life do humans create for themselves through their own short-sightedness or wrongdoing? One is punished where one has sinned. However, reasonable requests are granted more often than you believe. You think your prayer has not been answered because God has not produced a miracle for you, while in fact God has actually assisted you in such a natural manner that it seems to have been the effect of chance or the ordinary course of events. God even suggests the thought of what you must do to help yourselves when in trouble or when experiencing any kind of difficulty. So here, the spirit or the spirits that are answering, they are showing that, listen, just remember that many, and actually in the Gospel according to Spiritism, they say in chapter 5 that the majority of difficulties, of troubles that we are going through now, we have done during this lifetime, is not, from past incarnations. So what happened is they are remembering us that, listen, there are a lot of difficulties that you are going through that is the result of what you are doing now. So you have to think about it. You have to understand this. But at the same time, it is once again reassuring us that help will come and that it does come. And sometimes it comes in a very subtle way, indicating through our thoughts to the voice of consciousness. Remember when we just read, we just mentioned how Leon Denis presents as well the way that this voice is going to talk to our inner selves. It is the same here, but we do not recognize. And sometimes, even when we do hear, we do listen to this voice, not necessarily we are going to follow that. So we have this example on the Gospel according to Spiritism that talks about the effectiveness of prayer, that gives this example of this man lost in the desert. He is horribly thirsty. He feels fainty, drops to the ground, begs God to assist him, then waits, but no angel would bring him anything to drink. I mean, this is beautiful, because this is what we want to happen. I did my part. I talked to God. I prayed. So where's the miracle? Where are the angels that are going to come and bring me what I need, in response? But although there is no materialization of a spirit with a magic wand and wand is in his his hands, the good spirit is going to suggest to him the thought of getting up, of following one of the paths, and then in a mechanical movement, the man gathering his forces rises, walks, and reach a higher location, and he discovers a stream in the distance, and at the site he regains courage. What is going to happen there? Right? Again, we mentioned to this man, he prayed, but he didn't see any kind of miracle. He didn't see water all of a sudden start sprouting from his side. No, he had to somehow help himself, so heavens could help him gather his forces, stand up, and go in a direction. So here, the Gospel according to Spiritist presents as the following situation. He says, if he has faith, he will cry out, thank you, dear God, for the thought that you inspired in me and for the strength that you gave me. But if he does not have faith, he will say, what a good idea I had back there. How lucky I was to take the path of the right instead of the one on the left. Chance can sometimes really help. How much I congratulate myself on my courage and on not letting myself down. Sounds familiar? All right. This is what happens with us. Even when we say, no, I do have faith. Really, sometimes when good things happen to us, when we come across a good solution, what happens is that we're going to say, oh, maybe we even thank God, right? We will say, oh, thank God that I had this great idea, right? The idea was mine. The good result was mine, was my marriage, was my possibility. And we forget to praise God and the messengers that have been, giving us so much in this sense. And it is now that upon analyzing and talking and expanding all this knowledge that they could gather, Chico and his friends, in this single question of the Spiritist book, that Emmanuel is going to start giving him his contribution. And then Emmanuel says that prompt prayer does not promptly suppress our set of trials, but it renews our spirits so that we may either sublimate or eliminate them altogether. Notice the path shrouded by fog when a dark night distances you from the sun. Above you, extensive clouds steal the stars from your sight, and below you, thorns and precipices endangers your steps. In vain you will examine your compass clouded by the thick darkness. If you advance, you may throw yourself into wide open pits of mud. If you stop, you are likely to suffer the attack of treacherous animals. So here, having heard all the commentaries and the question that the Spirit proposed to, Kardec proposed to the Spirits and the answers, Emmanuel starts explaining about prayer and about the situations of life, the situations that we go through in life. Understanding that there are really times where we feel completely surrounded by this thick cloud, like he said, that there is no way out. that even if we have a compass, we will not be able to guide ourselves to look at it and see which direction should we take. And very much like we don't know where to go, because if we go one direction, like he says, we can meet the wide open pits of mud. If we stop, we can be subject to the treacherous animals. So this is not unfamiliar to us. I'm sure all of you have gone through situations like that, hopefully just once in time. But sometimes it's much more than that, right? Those situations that we go through that really makes us feel like the way Emmanuel is explaining it to us here. And he says that in spite of this, if we create a little bit of light, everything will change. So here he's saying, even if you are in this situation of not seeing a way out, of being so much pressured by the burdens of life, you still can create a little bit of light. So it is within our possibilities. And it's what we were talking about, Andrea Lewis here, right? When we talked about his example, he was in total despair. He had been suffering alone, accused, through starvation, all of that tiredness for 8 years in the lower zones, wandering around, not knowing when that was going to be over, until he finally surrendered. And he created a little bit of light. But it's so beautiful the way Emmanuel explains here. We can create a little bit of light. However, the pond won't lose its swampy appearance, and the stone will still be there as a challenge to warn you on the road. However, being able to see, you will emerge transformed and safe to move forward, overcoming the traps of the shadow and the tribulations of your march. So see the wisdom here. It's not that, again, by magic, by a sort of miracle, all the scenarios are going to, are going to change around us. No. The pond will have its swampy appearance, the stone will still be there, but now I have a little bit of light, and I can go through that without being subject to all the dangers that those things can bring upon my way. And so he says that prayer operates similarly on the pathways of our experience. So this is the little bit of light that he's talking about, prayer. And the more we have faith, the more we use prayer. That's why before getting into the message itself from Emmanuel and that one question from the Spirit's book, I wanted to talk to you about the other examples, questions that we had from Kardec in the Spirit's book, and even bring about Leon Denis, just for us to put all together here and to understand the importance of prayer in our lives. And how much beneficial they are for us incarnates and discarnates alike. So today, all those spirits that have departed 20 years ago, all the family members that are still suffering, and especially today, 20 years later, are longing for them, because of the lack of being able to be with them during this 20 years. All of those that are losing loved ones because of the pandemic and other situations. We have to pray for the ones that have departed as well. They will feel the benefit. They will feel, a refreshing in their souls. And we will be expanding light and light. It's like, sometimes when we see those big stadiums, when they have a concert or something, and someone, flicks the light here and the other one there, and all of a sudden the whole stadium, you have individual, small, tiny, a little bit of light. But when you look at the whole, we are changing the scenery of, that dark and that was there before, and we are illuminating our surroundings. And Emmanuel continues by saying, when pain obscures the horizons of your soul, depriving you of serenity and joy, everything seems like complete darkness and irremediable defeat, prompting you to discouragement and amplifying your despair. Nevertheless, if you ignite in your heart a light flame of prayer, imponderable threads of trust will connect you to divine providence. So it is there. It is within our reach. It is just up to us to use this resource. And I mean, we don't have to pay for that. We don't have to go to a special place to do that. There is no a specific time of the day for us to do that. There is no right or wrong formula to do that. We only have to talk to God with our hearts. And like it says here, imponderable threads of trust will connect us to the divine providence. Outwardly, around you, suffering doesn't change its dark appearance. Death still is and will always be a veil of painful separation. The trial is still the same unsettling test, and the blow of the atonement remains the difficult and inevitable struggle. But you yourself will be completely restored in the core of your own strengths, with your spiritual perception illuminated from within, so that you are able to understand, despite your pain, the wise plan of life, which raises you from the labyrinths of the world to the blessing of God's love. Emmanuel brings a very realistic way of us to look at the world and the experiences we have to go through. Because again, he's not coming as a representative of the spirits, evolved spirits, to tell us, oh, pray and everything will be all right. Everything will change. All your burdens are going to go away and nothing bad ever going to happen to you. No. He brings us the reality. But at the same time, both himself and the spirits that have answered Kardec's question, they say, even if things are not completely resolve it as we would like them to be, we will find strength, we will find courage, we will be restored here. Our spiritual perception will be able to understand that those things are necessary for us and that they are working in our own benefit or the benefit of the collectivity of the world. And this is what we have to think about. Again, this is where trust in God really matters. Because it's very easy for us to say, oh, no, I trust God. I know God. No, not when we only say that through our words, but when it comes the time for us to prove that, we are the ones that are not going to be succeeding in promoting the changes that are needed for us and for the world. And I thought it was very important for us to be thinking about it and to understand prayer in the sense of being the most important instrument that we have in order to change the possibilities, in order to change our, acceptance, to make us being more capable of accepting the things that we cannot change, right? To understand that they are there to help us in this journey and to do whatever we can to foster goodness in our world, to bring more peace in our world. Let us not be the ones that will be joined in negativity and dismay, but let us be the ones that will always be hopeful, that we will always understand that God is our Father, and as children of God that we are always going to be receiving God's mercy and unconditional love. I would like to end our presentation today bringing something that I mentioned here in the past about Kardec, but about his prayer and about his positioning in the world, but I think is very much in tune with what we are talking about here today. It was Kardec saying that whenever he was confronted with disappointments, annoyances, difficulties, he would lift uh, uh, his thoughts above humanity and put himself in advance in the spirit realm. And from that high point, from where he could see his end point, the miseries of life is light right over him without affecting him. This is a very beautiful lesson for us as well. Understand and accepting that disappointments, annoyances, difficulties are part of our humanity's process of evolvement, but this is not our true place of existence. We are destined for love, for peace. Our real world is the world of the spirits. And then when we return, if we are capable of coping, of dealing with things here, of not complaining, of resorting to prayer, we may be sure that we will find a much better scenery than the one that we are living now. And I'm going to finish with the prayer from Kardec when he received these wise counsels from the Spirit of Truth. O Lord, if you deign to set your eyes on me for the fulfillment of your designs, may your will be done. My life is in your hands. As your servant, I am at your disposal. I acknowledge my weakness before such a great endeavor. My goodwill will not fail, but perhaps my strength will give out. Supplement my deficiencies. Give me the physical and mental strength I will need. Sustain me in the difficult moments, and with your aid and the help of your heavenly messengers, I will use every effort to comply with your designs. My brothers and sisters, we are exactly in the same time that Kardec found himself, having received so many blessings, all this opportunity that we are having to uh, change our ways, to be able to use this incarnation to grow and to bring more peace and harmony in our world. So everyone is asking and wondering what we could be doing to better and to help our world in this moment. And the answer is prayer. Pray for yourself, pray for your loved ones, pray for all the world so that we can see happiness and the kingdom of heaven coming to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jussara, for such an enlightening discussion. Everyone, we're now open for your comments and questions. So Freddie said, good morning from Miami. Good morning, Freddie. How many prayers should we do every day?
Well, I read somewhere. I'm not going to remember now that prayer is the act of living itself. So because we still understand prayer as, being a special thing in terms of, I have to sit in a special place at certain times and recite certain words, we think that there will be a proper time, a proper way of praying. But praying is our behavior. When we understand about the immortality of our souls, when we think about God always present, about everything that we have in our lives, even the difficulties that they represent a gift from God. So all our actions should be a way of praying. But having said that, this is the ideal, right? We are not there yet. I myself, I like to pray always when I wake up and always when I go to sleep. And of course, during the day, if there is, need to do that as well, I will try to pray. And I pray before I work, to be inspired and to do my work properly. But at least in the morning, at night, I think it would help a lot.
Awesome. Thank you, Jussara. We have another question here. There are those that ask for someone else to pray for them, believing their own prayer is not strong enough. Can this be true?
No. We are all children of God, and whether we know how to pray, like we said before, with fancy words, and it is not about that. It is about how much we, emotionally speaking, spiritually speaking, are going to connect with God. So someone else's prayer, as beautiful and important as it may be, not necessarily will be stronger than our own prayers. I myself, I believe that our own prayers are stronger than everything else. Of course, because Jesus said, where two or more unite in my name to pray, I will be there. It doesn't hurt when you're going through a difficult time to spread the news and ask for your loving ones, for your friends to pray together with you, to raise their thoughts to God as well. But our prayers are always going to be very important. And so I would recommend each one of us to pray for ourselves, but not necessarily dispense with the prayers of others as well to join us and to help us in this endeavor.
Absolutely. So Louise, hi Louise, he's asking us, you have mentioned trials that must be experienced. Consider one being heavily obsessed during incarnation. Can it be considered trial for the spirit of being obsessed, or being obsessed is not a possible trial? Can you talk about it, Jussara?
Yeah. Hi, Louise. How are you doing? Yeah, sure. We read so many things about important information actually about obsession and the importance of also going through that as a process of growth for both the one that is exerting this power over the other in this incarnation, and the thing is, we we tend to think that the person that is suffering an obsession this lifetime is a victim, and we learn that this is not the case, that no one is out of nothing is going to start persecuting you with that eagerness to destroy your life for trivial things, right? That there may be people that in spirits that do not like you for whatever reason, but the ones that are going to be, really persecuting you, you have history with this spirit. And so according to what the spirits tell us, it is allowed that we go through this process of obsession to learn together, to offer each other a possibility of growing together and overcoming this hatred that, or mutual hatred that may exist among us. So yeah, it is a trial. In a way, they say that the obsessor, we have this phrase, right? Keep a friend close, but an enemy closer, saying that sometimes the enemy they will keep us on track, right? So the obsessor sometimes it is this enemy that will keep us on track. If it was not because of that, perhaps we would be compromising ourselves more. And in this process of learning, of forgiving, of, in our case, going to spiritist centers and studying all those books, the obsessor is going to be learning with us. So now we can tell them, well, if you do not want to change yourself, you better move out, because from on my part, you will be all the time be hearing talking about spirits, about spiritual things, about God, about the protectors, and so it's your choice. But yes, it is a trial.
Thank you, Jussara. It's a great remembering for all of us. But Sol Sousa is saying, I heard the mom's prayers are the best. Do you agree with it, Jussara?
Hey, hi, sorry. Yeah, sure. Because what we were talking before, there is that's what they say, right? No love on earth as great, as big as the love of a mother. So everything that we were talking about in the beginning of our talk was exactly that, about our emotion when connecting to God. So when a mother prays for her child, the emotion of a mother that will give her life to save or to spare the child from one trouble, one difficulty, is what we are talking about here. So it's not simply because it's the mother, simply because it's a woman, simply because it's almost a Mother Teresa. No, it's because of the emotion, the connection, very much like when we talk about the intercessory prayer, right? When we pray for somebody else, which is what we're talking about here. Like we say, sometimes people automatically just write down the name of people. Oh, that friend asking me to put their names there to pray. Just for me not to feel guilty, let me go there and put the name down. But you have no emotion. You really do not feel like doing something in favor. I mean, it's not that you are cheering against, it's not what we were saying, but you're not bringing your emotion. When you write down the name, you're not saying, oh, please, God, this person is in so much need. I really pray that you can help her. And I'm doing my best in this sense, or help me to help as well. This is a different thing. This is when the emotion, when the true feelings come. And that's why chances are that a mom's prayer will continue to be very powerful, because it comes out of love. It comes out of a true connection. And this is why it can sometimes even look like it's a sort of a miracle.
Yes, yes, indeed. So, from the U.S. Spiritist Federation page, we have a question. You described Andre Luis hitting the bottom and remembering to pray based on the book No Solar. Can you, Jussara, talk about the idea of a non-religious person? I think you mentioned a scientific-minded person, access to God through prayer they may not have previously believed.
You see, it's the example of Andre Luis himself.
Mhm.
Right, that was his situation. He, of course, at the time he was here on earth, he was raised Catholic. Everyone was Catholic at that time. The book even described his mother as being a very devoted person, but he never paid attention to that. And of course, after he grew up, went to medical school, pursued his career in this area, there was no need for him to, he never felt the need or the connection with God or anything religious.
Mhm.
And it was no surprise that when he died, he went through the same situation. So he was basically a non-religious person. He described himself not necessarily as not believing in God, but what happened with many people, right? So
Mhm.
non-religious. He was not necessarily an atheist, but he was not a non-religious person. And even when he reaches this point where he prays here, we are not talking about him reciting the Lord's Prayer or any other prayer, well-known prayer. No, here he finds himself addressing to God. He's not even, I mean, at least in the book, it doesn't say like this, but he doesn't even say God. He says, if there is a higher mind, creator, I don't remember quite well, but I think he doesn't say God. And so it is not a memorized prayer like we say. It was just him at that moment of despair, as a last resource, really feeling, that idea that I don't know if there is someone there, but if there is, please, I do need help. So everyone can do that.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be a specific sort of religious belonging to this or that religion, for people to make this kind of connection.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Jussara. I think we have time for one more question. And we have another question from the U.S. Spiritist Federation. Emmanuel is teaching us that it is within the realm of possibility to overcome total despair when surrendering to the moment of pain and creating light through prayer. Can prayer help us prevent getting to that point?
Oh, that was wonderful, because that should be our goal. I don't want to be in the position to fix the error. I want to be in a position of not having to fix errors anymore, because I'm not going to commit them. So that's why, when we talk about the nature of prayers, and normally we say, according to what we have in the Spirit book, that we have the praise, the ask, and the giving thanks. We normally do the one of asking because we are in trouble and we need help, and please come and help me. But we forget to pray to prevent us, from committing errors ourselves, to make us be able to see clear, to be protected from ourselves, because, like, again, and we mentioned in chapter 5 of the gospel according to Spiritism, we see there, the Spirit's telling us that the majority of difficulties we go now is because of things that we are doing now. So if we are doing them now, it is in my hands to just change and not do this anymore, right? So yeah, I think we should at least, little by little, come to this point that we will use this resource to ask for protection, uh, for the cleansing of our own spirit, of all the environment, and uh, and and reason more upon the actions we are going to commit in the world, so we can prevent situations of going into despair. There are things that, still at this point, they are inevitable. It's part of our past, it's part of what we need for this process of growing. But there are many things that we could be doing to make our lives easier, and praying for this kind of protection, like we have in the Lord's Prayer, deliver me from temptation, right?
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Thank you, Jussara. I think we are at time. So I want to thank you, thank everyone who watched today this discussion, and those who have been following our weekly talks. So next Saturday, September 18th, Eastern, 11 o'clock Eastern time. Please don't miss Márcio Silva. Márcio will be speaking about our important choices to suffer well or badly. So from that, I would like to ask you, Jussara, to please say our final prayer. And for everyone, thank you and have a great weekend.
And uniting our thoughts together, but above all, our hearts, let us say a special prayer for all those who have perished in this city 20 years ago, surrounding the place with light, so that all energy that may still be lingering there be removed and be transformed in a place of renovation, a renewal to the souls. That all the family members that went through this pain may feel the love and light of our Heavenly Creator. For all those that continue losing people in this pandemic, all that have departed, all that are ill at this moment, they may receive the necessary assistance. And for all of us that are now struggling with our own imperfections, that are preventing us to feel more peace and to find the happiness we need. May we feel the loving embrace of the spiritual friends that are visiting us in each and every home. And we ask them to assist us in overcoming our own imperfections and being able to bring more love and enlightenment to our surroundings, to this world. So be it.